All right, really quick, I'm David Torgerson. I just have a funny story to start because that's the best way to start. This morning, my Uber driver pulled up to the casino entrance. I was around at the Uber pickup spot, so I messaged them and said, hey, are you at the entrance? Because I'm at the Uber spot. And I get a text back almost immediately that said, I'm on my way to get you. No, you're not gonna get me, you son of a bee. And then that was the message, and I was like, that's aggressive. And I immediately got another message that said, I am so sorry, that message was not for you. I then see on the GPS, them pass by and then loop around and come back. And I'm thinking I should not get in this car. But she pulls up and she seems nice, so I get in anyway, thinking at least if I get kidnapped, I won't be presenting today. And then she apologizes profusely. She said that she was saying, I'm on my way to get you, and just then a car came down the wrong side of the street, so she started screaming at them, no, you're not gonna get me. But anyway, that was my Uber story of the day, and I'm David Torgerson.
I'm Jake Sullivan, managing consultant with Oxalis, an award-winning solution partner. I do not have a funny story to share. I'm just happy to be here in person. I'm in Vegas. It's great seeing all your beautiful faces. All right, quick rundown of the agenda. So we're gonna kick off with David sharing a little bit of detail around some of the key factors that drove Lucid's migration to Atlassian Cloud. We'll talk about some of the steps that we took to help shorten their timeline to a record-breaking 30 days migration to the cloud. We're gonna share some key results that the Lucid teams have experienced since that migration, and then we'll wrap up with 10, 15 minutes at the end for any questions and answers.
All right, so first, why move to the cloud? And to understand that, we first have to say that we were not in the cloud. We were using Atlassian server products. I had joined Lucid 8.5 years ago. They only had like 20 people in the office. And when I joined, they were editing Word documents and storing them in a shared drive, and that was their document repository. I had some Atlassian experience, so implemented Atlassian server for Jira and Confluence very early on. And over the years, Atlassian's grown with us, we've grown with Atlassian. We've built a lot of our business processes and practices around the feature sets that Atlassian gives us with automated workflows through Jira, document repository through Confluence. This is probably a very familiar story to many of you. We are a SaaS company though. We build a SaaS product, and we were using an on-prem server offering, which it wasn't a good look for us. So we knew that we wanted to correct that, but at the time, the Atlassian plugin ecosystem on server was really where the development was happening, and cloud was a little bit newer. It wasn't quite there. They didn't quite have the ecosystem around it. So we knew that we wanted to get to the cloud eventually, and because of that, we had been paying attention to the plugins that we were using, we had been paying attention to the workflows that we had implemented, et cetera. So we had an inventory knowing that eventually we were going to make it to the cloud. Well, 1 month, several things came about where the entire executive team all had a different reason why they wanted to get us to the cloud. One reason was our CEO was not terribly happy that we had a SaaS offering and we were using the on-prem product. Our product team, Lucid Software, has a Lucid Chart plugin to cloud offerings, and we weren't using that, so our product team wasn't happy about it. I manage our security and IT and SRE teams, and those are some of the most tapped teams at Lucid in terms of resource utilization and objectives, and they were having to spend their time with security patches and with updates and with stability and with scaling instances and weekend calls and evening calls about the instability of the server offering or restoring a backup in the middle of the night. I wanted to get that off my plate. So we had a coalition of executives that all wanted to get the benefits that we would typically get from a cloud offering. So our CEO said, come back with a proposal. I went out and looked. So I would take on average 6 months. I thought I was being aggressive and came back to our CEO and executive team and said, we're gonna do it in 3 months. Like, we have a history of doing impossible things on impossible timelines. We're gonna do it in 3 months and it's gonna be awesome. And dead-faced, he just looked and said, what would it take to do it in 2 weeks? And our jaws kind of hit the floor. We weren't prepared for that. We thought we were already being aggressive. And one thing that our SVP of product leads with is, you can tell me any problem, but I want you to finish that story with, and then we deliver by date. So applying that exercise of, okay, we're not going to do it in 30 days or 3 months, we're going to do it in 2 weeks. What are the things that need to change in order to make that happen? So we decided to accelerate the timeline. And one of the things that we really noticed was that we didn't know a lot of things. Like, we had never been through a cloud migration. Most companies only ever do this one time. So the amount of information of like, here's the experience that we had is not, there's a couple blog posts, but it's not really documented. Atlassian has some great documentation, but what was relevant to us? There's just so much out there. So one of the big things that we identified is we were not going to do it on our own if we wanted to deliver it on an accelerated timeline.
That's where Oxalis came in. I'll give the caveat, at the time we did not know they had the big, hairy, audacious goal of a 2-week migration. But taking us a little bit back in time, it was early 2021, just short months after Atlassian announced the end of life for their server product. Lucid had reached out to Atlassian expressing a need for assistance, and Atlassian pointed them our way. At Oxalis, we've really honed an approach and methodology for cloud migrations that's been really successful, obviously. And we helped collaborate with Atlassian on some of the first cloud migration playbooks and materials. Right here, you're just seeing a high-level overview of kind of our standard migration pattern. For us, we think it's really important to look beyond the technology that's being moved and really establish a robust process to help mitigate risk, really affect true organizational change, and use this as an opportunity to really impact the way that people are working. So we can really turn this challenge into an opportunity to improve collaboration across the enterprise. So we started talking with David and his team. They had a moderately sized, moderately complex environment. I think 800 users, 80 or so projects, 14 plugins. We broke the news to them that they needed Atlassian access for single sign-on, which is an experience I think many of you can relate to. They'd done a few test migrations themselves and were a little disappointed in the result. So we estimated it was going to take them approximately 2 to 4 months.
And then we told them, what would it take to do it in 2 weeks? And they had a similar response. You guys didn't really have an answer. Mm-hmm. You had to go back and talk with your team to figure out how to accomplish that as well. So we took a weekend. I think we had the conversation on a Wednesday or a Thursday. We decided to regroup and meet together that following Monday. And both teams had a common goal of what would it take to do it in 2 weeks. It's unheard of to do it shorter than 3 months. What would it take to do it in 2 weeks? And what we came prepared with, what Lucid came prepared with, was we had identified what was most important to us. We scratched off the board that we had to have exact parity between the cloud and the server offering. And that was an essential decision and a deliberate one. Once we scratched that off the board, we said, okay, what are the requirements? We have to have disaster recovery. We have to have backups. We have to have people go home on Friday and come back to Monday and not have their work experience diminished in any way, which sounds similar to you have to have feature parity, but it's really not, because there's so many ways to accomplish tasks in the Atlassian products. They're a Swiss Army knife. You can do so much, and often all that needs to change is a process. So we scratched off the feature parity. We just made sure that we identified what were the must-haves. And once we removed that scope, we realized, well, there's 5 plugins that we just don't even need. Like, they're doing things that nobody has touched in a long time. We don't need to invest in that work. And the one person that cares, we can just have a conversation with them and see how important it is. And it wasn't important. We could just get rid of it. All right, so going back to what would it take to do it in 2 weeks? Not possible. We did not do it in 2 weeks. What we did do, though, is come up with a timeline that said that we could fit it in 30 days based off of our best guess.
And that brings us to our revised timeline. Here we're just seeing an abbreviated 30-day timeline, and I'll be honest, 30 days was a challenge. I think it took a lot more collaboration and close communication to address any of the problems that came up as we progressed through the project. As David mentioned, we worked with the team pretty quickly to assess the situation and focused on the MVP. What were those critical capabilities? What was most important to Lucid as an organization? I think that's one of the key factors that made Lucid unique, was that top-down approach and buy-in from the C-suite on down, that the entire organization was unified around a vision of what success was going to look like coming out the far end. Even in this condensed timeline, we didn't skimp on proactive communication or change management. One of the benefits as Oxalis was brought in partway through their migration journey was that they'd been beating the drum and communicating the value to their end users and community from day one. So we were just able to come in, help focus on what was really important for them as an organization, and just amplify and reinforce that same message. I think from the Oxalis side, we helped provide structure and process leadership to help make the migration a success. We certainly couldn't have done it without David and his team, bringing really incredible adaptability and a firm commitment to the cause and the vision that the C-suite had cast forward for them. I think other organizations, you might be able to achieve similar results. What we want you to take away is really focus on what matters for you and your organization. For Lucid, it was clearly becoming a SaaS, utilizing a SaaS platform as a SaaS product company, and making sure that their developers were able to experience their product firsthand. For you, it might be different. There could be compliance, security, the nature of your business working with external customers might change what's important to you to achieve and have your migration become a success. But use this as an opportunity to address tech debt rather than refinancing it. And this is a really great opportunity for you to change how people work and take advantage of some of the latest and greatest features on the cloud platform. Leverage expert resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, folks like Oxalis, we've seen it all. We know what good looks like. We know what's important and what you can kind of leave for later post-migration. It will really help you invest your time in the areas that will provide the most value. And again, increase your odds for success. Testing is incredibly important. I think we don't want surprises at restaurants, and certainly don't want surprises during cloud migrations. Every organization is going to have a slightly different combination of products and versions, plugins, usage patterns. We can't eliminate all of our risk, but there are methods through robust testing and dry runs to mitigate and minimize it. And finally, that stakeholder buy-in. We were lucky to come into the situation where Lucid had already established a coalition of trusted stakeholders, aligned in their vision, and pulling in folks who were both champions, but also naysayers and detractors to make sure that they were set up for success.
All right, so going along with the change management, really the migration challenges came down to two things. One, there was a technical part to it, and then there was a people part to it. The technical part we solved by pulling in an implementation partner expert that knew what good looked like, and they knew what bad looked like, and more importantly, they knew what a bug looked like. For us, every time we ran into an issue, it was another support ticket to Atlassian because we didn't know if we were doing it wrong or if it was a bug or if it was an intended behavior. So having that expert partner that had seen all of those things made a huge difference. We did dry runs. We tested every migration method that is documented anywhere on the internet to see what would be the best solution to take what we currently had and get us as close as possible to the cloud offering, including testing the workflows, testing, all of our projects, the images, whether or not those show up, whether or not the permissions were maintained as we went through the migration. And through that, we were able to solve the technical part. The other part was equally challenging, and that's the people part. Humans are creatures of habit. They don't like change. We don't like change. And often we fear the unknown. We don't actually fear the change. We fear the unknown impact of that change. So what we deliberately did was we started pulling together, we called them a coalition of champions. And the goal was that we were going to pick people across all departments and have them be the plants, so that after the migration, if there was issues or if it was a success, they would be the people that their teams go to as the trusted expert on why we did this, how we did it, what are the unknowns, what are the knowns, etc. The other important piece about this was we wanted to explain to our users why we were doing it. We weren't just doing it to check a box. There was real benefit to Lucid. We wanted to be able to deliver features to our users faster. We were able to do that by eliminating some of the time that we were spending managing the infrastructure and having those people work on different things. So we wanted to communicate and get our Lucid team excited about this change. So that coalition of champions that I referred to, we picked people that were excited about moving to the cloud. We also picked deliberately people that thought it was a stupid idea. And those people that were against the change were the most valuable testers because they were looking for everything they could to point out why it was a bad idea to migrate. In fact, if I had to do it again, I would probably just look for more people that thought it was a dumb idea. But we got all those people together, and through the dry runs, we caught every issue. I think we had one issue the day or the weekend of the migration, which was a real weird edge case that had to do with one user's images. But we were able to fix it in a couple of minutes. So champions to win over the stakeholders, that fixed the second major issue during the migration, really was the coalition of champions.
I think kind of wrapping up the change management piece was really making sure that you're testing and communicating early and often. One of the things that we stress at Oxalis is plan for dry runs in dress rehearsals. Proactive communication, dry runs, acceptance testing, access to sandbox environments. These are all tools that are really helpful in helping build consensus, build confidence in the process and the end solution, and address some of the common concerns that folks have. All change is hard, system migrations can be even harder, and I think the more that you can shift some of that concern and address folks' fears earlier rather than later is only going to help you when it's the cutover weekend. Dry runs are important for the testing team and the migration team. You're going to have a very intense weekend where you're going to be working within your organization with Atlassian, potentially a solution partner and third-party vendors across the globe, and making sure that you have the right people in the room and access to the right people to address any problems that come up is critically important. And finally, leverage expert and internal resources. There's a ton of information out there now. I think in the last year since Lucid migrated, there's been a huge proliferation and documentation from Atlassian, from solution partners. I think it's best to take a lot of those raw materials and kind of craft them in the image, in the communication style that works best for your organization so that your colleagues and team members are open and willing to accept that message. And again, a solution partner can help you navigate what's out there and really cherry pick what's most helpful, what's most important based off of your goalpost and organization.
And I mentioned this before, but when we actually got time to do the migration, it happened over a weekend. Our users went home on Friday, they came back on Monday. Most of them didn't even know that a change had happened. Like everybody knew that it had happened, but it just worked. There wasn't anything different. And the advantages of Atlassian Cloud, it was designed to be on the internet. Before you had to be on a VPN to access our instance. We kept the server locked down. Now we're able to rely on the Atlassian security, and we're using Access for SSO and for role-based management. So there's a lot of benefits that those users were able to immediately take advantage of, but there was no impact to their day-to-day work, which was our primary objective that we set out to accomplish. All right, so further the mission. We are seeing the benefits of migrating to the cloud, and I'm sure that all of you that are in here because you're evaluating it. The benefits that we've seen is we are able to dog food our own plugin, which means that we are able to develop features faster for our users because we are running into the problems that our users would run into. My teams no longer have to worry about the midweek security patches like Log4j, didn't care. Well, at least for Atlassian. That was Atlassian to care about. I don't have to deal with resource planning. I just add additional users when we need additional users. And our employees are just happier using the cloud product. I mentioned at the beginning of this session that the plugin ecosystem years ago was focused on server and data center. And that has largely shifted. So the number of plugins and the number of enhancements that are available to us now has just increased significantly, which makes us able to automate more and more of our roles, which is everybody loves automation. One important thing to call out, so I had budgeted in my headcount 25% of a full-time SRE's hire just to maintain our Atlassian products. After the cloud migration, I was able to reallocate that. In fact, I changed my entire hiring plan for the year because I no longer needed to account for that time. That was a service that Atlassian was providing us, and quite honestly, Atlassian's doing it better than my engineer because I don't think he wanted to do it.
And kind of just wrapping us up before we go into Q&A, just wanted to share a few quotes from some of the folks who helped out during UAT. They were part of that coalition of champions and really helped to make the overall migration successful. So here we have one from Emma Reese. When I first heard we were moving to Atlassian Cloud, I was worried how it would impact my existing data and workflow. Now I can't even remember a time before we were on cloud. Definitely a sentiment that I think that we hear a lot, that the experience and usability are so improved that it's really hard to imagine a time before, really hard to imagine why we had the same kind of fears or concerns about migration. And kind of the funny thing about these quotes is that we published a success story and case study on the Atlassian website, so that's available for folks to review right now. But these comments were totally unprovoked. Atlassian started promoting the case study on LinkedIn and Twitter, and there was kind of an outpouring of support from folks at Lucid bringing to bear some of their experiences and perspective as they went through the cloud migration and are now experiencing the improved platform. And the last one from Chance Ramey. So the Jira software interface is better, the experience is smoother. Advanced roadmaps is a game changer as well. As our priorities change, we can update our plans on the fly and better track if we're ready for releases. From Oxalis' perspective, Atlassian Cloud is certainly the most usable and performant version of the Atlassian suite. Definitely all system migrations are challenging, but this really is a great opportunity for you to unlock new capabilities and bring more collaboration to bear for your teams and organization. Really think focusing on MVP, focusing on what values, cultivate that stakeholder buy-in from the top down, and deploy that robust methodology of testing, dry runs, UAT to help mitigate and minimize risk. So in the heat of the moment on production go live weekend, you know exactly what to expect, and you have the right people in place to address any kind of new challenges that come up.
And just to reiterate, the three things that I think led to success. One, executive buy-in. If your executive team is divided in the reasons why you're wanting to accomplish a cloud migration, you're going to run into all sorts of roadblocks. Just people being unwilling to go to bat for their teams or to talk positively about the project. So executive buy-in, top-down, absolute must. Second, from a technical perspective, you can do it on your own. But all those unknowns are going to bite you. It is so valuable having somebody that's done it before that can say, that is a bug, and you should not spend any more time fixing it, is just immense. And then the third, don't forget about your users. Your users can endure a lot of pain if they think the reward is worth it. If not, if they're apprehensive about it, any little issue that comes up is going to look like a failure to them. So make sure to communicate what success looks like. Those were the three things that led to the magic of 30 days. Thank you very much for your time.